My mother was only a teenager when she married my father. She was still a girl herself, barely beginning to understand who she was, when life demanded she become a wife, a woman, and soon after, a mother. She was fragile, inexperienced, and overwhelmed. Then came me. I was not planned. I was not wished for. I was not the happy ending to a love story. I was an accident, a surprise that neither of them knew how to handle. From the very start, I carried the silent weight of being unwanted. Even as a child, I could feel it, this unspoken truth that I had arrived at the wrong time, in the wrong way. For the first 8 years of my life, I believed I was my father's little princess. He would hold my hand tightly, lift me onto his shoulders, make me feel like I was the most precious thing in his world. I clung to those moments with everything I had, because deep down, I feared they might not last. And I was right. When my brother was born, the house changed. Suddenly, my father's eyes didn't linger on me with the same warmth. My mother's exhaustion grew heavier, and the tension between them filled every corner of our home. Arguments became the background noise of my childhood. Doors slammed, tears were hidden, love turned into silence. At that age, I didn't understand marriage or adult problems. All I knew was that the warmth I once felt was fading, and like children often do, I blamed myself. I told myself, maybe if I hadn't been born, they would still be happy. Maybe everything would be different if I didn't exist. That thought rooted itself inside me, a dangerous seed of guilt that grew quietly, shaping the way I saw myself, shaping the way I understood love. When I was 14, life demanded more of me than it should ever demand of a child. My parents' marriage was already broken, held together only by routine and necessity. Then my little sister was born. She should have been a symbol of hope. But instead, her arrival pushed my mother into darkness. Postpartum depression swallowed her whole. She would lie in bed for hours, unable to move, unable to smile. I can still remember the emptiness in her eyes, the way her body was there, but her soul seemed gone. And in that absence, I stepped in. I fed my sister. I rocked her to sleep. I became her comfort, her nurse, her substitute mother. And for my mother, I became her confidant, her listener, her caretaker. I was 14, but life didn't care. I was forced into roles I didn't choose, carrying responsibilities far too heavy for my fragile shoulders. Meanwhile, my father disappeared completely. Not with words, not with explanation, just absence. His silence spoke louder than any goodbye. He abandoned us without looking back. And once again, I blamed myself. I thought, if only I had been better, maybe he would have stayed. If only I hadn't been born, maybe none of this would have happened. It is cruel how easily a child can be convinced that her very existence is the cause of someone else's unhappiness. I carried that lie like a burden strapped to my chest. It shaped the way I saw love, family, and myself. At 15, my wounded heart found a distraction. A boy from church. He was older, charming, and he noticed me. For a girl who had spent her life feeling invisible, that attention was intoxicating. He spoke to me with sweetness, looked at me with eyes that made me feel important, and for the first time I thought, maybe this is what love feels like. I gave him my trust, my innocence, my fragile hope. But love, at least the kind I found, came with shadows. First, I discovered he had a daughter. My heart cracked, but I forgave him. I told myself love meant forgiveness, that maybe God had put me there to heal him. But the truth came harsher. He wasn't just hiding a daughter. He was hiding a wife, a whole family that I had never known about. I wasn't his love. I was his secret, his lie. The betrayal tore me apart. I felt dirty, ashamed, like I had been tricked into stealing something that was never mine. The whispers in my mind grew louder. See? You are not enough. You will never be enough. That heartbreak left scars I couldn't see but carried everywhere. It taught me to confuse love with pain, loyalty with sacrifice, and I would carry those lessons into every relationship that came after. When I was 19, my heart was tired. I was older, but still broken, searching for something to believe in, and that's when I met Daniel. He wasn't the kind of man who turned heads, not handsome in the way stories describe, but he had something else. He had laughter that softened my pain. He had patience when I spoke. He made me feel seen, safe. For a girl who had never known safety, that was priceless. We became friends first. We spent hours walking through the streets, sharing stories, laughing at nothing. He rode his bike, and I walked beside him, both of us pretending time didn't exist. Slowly, without realizing it, I fell, not into passion, but into comfort, into the idea that maybe, just maybe, this man wouldn't leave. Everyone around us assumed we were already a couple, and maybe, deep down, we were, because the line between friendship and love blurred until there was no line left. Daniel wasn't extraordinary, but he was mine, and after years of abandonment, mine felt like a miracle. I was a woman of faith, so I asked God for confirmation. I prayed, Lord, if Daniel is the one you've chosen for me, give me a sign. Let him appear wearing yellow. It seemed impossible. Daniel hated bright colors. He never wore them. But the very next day he walked in dressed head to toe in yellow. A jersey, socks, even a wristband. I couldn't believe my eyes. To me, that wasn't coincidence. That was God himself whispering, "This is the one." From that moment on, I was convinced Daniel was my destiny. My prayers had been answered. My forever had finally arrived. We had nothing. No savings, no luxury, no stability. But together we had dreams. I was in college, working hard, selling baked goods to help my mother with bills. Daniel worked unloading trucks, tired but determined. We built our life out of scraps and faith. We signed the papers for our first apartment with just $100 for a deposit. No furniture, no plan, just belief. We laughed as we carried boxes into an empty space, slept on 2 single mattresses pushed together, and promised each other that someday it would all be worth it. In 2020, we got married. Not in the way I had dreamed, not in a church, not surrounded by flowers and music, just a small civil ceremony, in a world suffocated by masks and fear. But none of that mattered to me, because for the first time, I truly believed I had built the family I had always longed for. But reality doesn't wait. Marriage did not heal my wounds. Instead, it revealed them. Bills piled up. Exhaustion grew. Silence stretched between us. I was the provider. I was the one carrying the weight. Financially, emotionally, spiritually. Daniel seemed adrift, without ambition, without urgency. I told myself love meant sacrifice. So I sacrificed myself, again and again. Every disappointment I forgave. Every argument I endured. Every time he pulled away, I pulled harder, trying to hold us together. I believed that was what loyalty meant. That was what love required. But little by little I disappeared. I lost pieces of myself in the name of keeping us whole, and I didn't realize how empty I had become. After a year of marriage, my heart longed for something more. I wanted a child, not just a child. I wanted to heal through motherhood. I wanted to give love in the purest form, to create the family I had never truly had. I thought that by holding a baby of my own, all the pain of abandonment would finally make sense, that I could rewrite the story my parents had broken. Month after month I prayed. I cried. I counted days, stared at tests, begged God for a miracle. And every time the answer was the same. No, another negative, another piece of my heart breaking. I would sit on the bathroom floor, clutching the small plastic stick in my hand, tears streaming down my face. I asked myself why. Why couldn't my body do the one thing it was supposed to? Why couldn't I give Daniel what he deserved? Why couldn't I be enough? Daniel said it didn't matter. He said we were enough, just the two of us. But in his eyes, I saw something different. Distance. Disappointment he didn't speak, but I could feel. Silence that spoke louder than any words. And so, the whisper began inside me, louder with each month that passed. You are not enough. You will never be enough. Then came the night everything shattered. His phone lit up, and curiosity turned into devastation. I saw her name. I saw the words that once belonged to me, now written to someone else. Sweetness, promises, intimacy, laughter. I felt the world tilt beneath me. My hands shook as I read message after message, each one a dagger. This wasn't just a mistake. This was betrayal. When I confronted him, I expected denial, excuses, maybe even shame. But he didn't deny it. He didn't even apologize. He looked me in the eye and said, "I'm not happy anymore." As if happiness was a vow. As if his promises meant nothing. as if our years together could be dismissed with a single sentence. And in that moment I realized, the man I thought God had chosen for me, the man I believed was my destiny, had chosen someone else. I begged. I cried. I lowered myself in ways I never thought I would. I clung to his leg, desperate, pleading, "Don't leave me. I can't live without you." But the truth was clear. He was already gone. His love had left long before that night. His body was still there, but his heart had been with her. When the door closed behind him, the silence that filled the house was deafening. It was the kind of silence that crushes your chest, that makes every second feel like an eternity. The kind of silence that tells you, it's over. I lay on the floor, shaking, begging God to bring him back. But prayers cannot resurrect a love that has already died. The days that followed blurred into one endless night. I stopped eating. Food lost its taste. I stopped sleeping. My bed became a prison. I stared at the ceiling for hours, memories replaying like torture. Our first walks, our laughter, our dreams, and then the betrayal. My mind wouldn't stop. It was like a movie on repeat, playing all the ways I wasn't enough. I asked myself the same questions over and over. Why wasn't I lovable? Why did everyone I love leave me? Was I cursed to repeat my mother's story? I smiled for the world, but inside, I was empty, ashes, a shell of who I used to be. But somewhere in that emptiness, something shifted. At my lowest, when I thought I had nothing left, I discovered a whisper of truth. Daniel was never my destiny. He was my lesson. A painful, cruel, necessary lesson. A lesson that love cannot be sustained by sacrifice alone. A lesson that I was never meant to destroy myself just to hold someone else together. For the first time, I stopped asking why he left. Instead, I asked why I begged him to stay. Slowly, painfully, I began to rise. Not in a grand way, but in small steps. One meal, one night of sleep, one breath at a time. The silence that once suffocated me began to heal me. I started to realize that I wasn't just the abandoned girl. I wasn't just the desperate wife. I wasn't just the broken heart. I was a survivor. Each day, I found pieces of myself I thought were gone. I found strength in the very places I thought I was weakest. I found courage in the simple act of continuing to live. One morning I looked in the mirror, and for the first time in years, I didn't see someone broken. I saw someone alive. Someone scarred, yes, but stronger. Someone worthy. My world collapsed the day I discovered Daniel's betrayal. Everything I thought was permanent crumbled into dust. But sometimes, things must collapse so something stronger can rise. I thought love meant losing myself. I thought devotion meant sacrifice without limits. I thought forever meant holding on, even when it hurt. But now, I know love begins with me, that I am my own forever, that no one can complete me because I was never incomplete. Daniel was not my destiny. He was the fire that burned away my illusions, the storm that washed away my denial. And in the ashes, I found the truth. I will never again beg someone to stay, because I have finally learned I am enough. As I pieced myself back together, I realized Daniel wasn't the first man to abandon me. The pattern had been there all along. It began with my father. His absence carved the first wound in me, the wound that told me love always leaves. For years, I chased men trying to fill the hole he left behind. I begged for affection, settled for crumbs, confused attention with love. And in Daniel, I thought I had found redemption. But in truth, I was just repeating history. It was never my fault. My father left because of his own brokenness, just as Daniel betrayed because of his. I am not the cause of someone else's emptiness. And that realization set me free. Through the darkest nights, I held on to faith, even when I felt abandoned by God. I screamed at him, cried to him, demanded answers. And slowly, in the silence, I began to hear him again. Not in signs, not in yellow clothes, not in whispered promises of forever, but in the quiet strength that rose inside me when I thought I had none, in the resilience that carried me from one day to the next. God had never abandoned me. He was teaching me that I was worthy of love that does not break me, that I was capable of standing on my own, that his plan was greater than the one I thought I needed. The pain didn't disappear overnight. Healing wasn't linear. Some days, I still felt broken. Some nights, I still cried. But I no longer defined myself by who left me. I am not the abandoned child. I am not the betrayed wife. I am not the mistake. I am a woman who has walked through fire and survived. A woman who has been shattered but refused to stay broken. A woman who finally understands that being enough was never something I had to earn. It was something I always was. And with that truth, I step into a new beginning, not defined by the past, but by the strength I carry into the future.